Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be talking about short score and open score. Now, what on earth is this topic about? Well, it's about writing for voices. And strangely, we have these two terms, short and open. Now, you would think that short might go with long or open might go with closed, but that logic is not with us, I'm afraid. So we either have short score or we have open score. So we're looking at an example now of something that's written in short score. Actually, this example is just a hymn tune, quite a well-known Welsh hymn tune called Cwm Rhondda. And you can see that in short score, what we've got is the four vocal parts, soprano, alto, tenor and bass, with the soprano and alto parts written in the treble clef and the tenor and the bass parts written in the bass clef. So that's how it works in short score. Two voices in the upper clef, the treble clef, two voices in the lower clef, the bass clef. And when you're doing things like writing hymn tunes or when Bach wrote his chorales, that kind of stuff, this is a perfectly reasonable way of writing for voices. And we'll talk about why open score might be better for other vocal presentations in a moment. But you can see how it works with 2 plus 2. When you're writing in short score, if you want to know how to do this, you notice that the normal rules about stem direction don't apply. You know, normally we have this rule that says when you're on the middle line of a stave, the stem could go up or it could go down. And when you're above the middle line, the stems go down. When you're below the middle line, the stems go up. Well, if you did that when you've got two parts sharing the same stave, then who knows which stem belongs to whom. So to make life much easier, the sopranos and the tenors have all of their stems going up regardless of where they are on the stave, and the altos and the basses have all of their stems going down regardless of where they are. So when we look at this score, we can see straight away that in the treble clef, all those notes with the stems up are soprano notes, all those notes with the stems down are alto notes. When we look at the bass clef, all the stems up belong to the tenors, all the stems down belong to the basses. So you can see how that actually looks in the score. And just so you just get to hear what this sounds like, I'll just play it from the short score and you can kind of follow it through and just see how the parts are written and how the stems go. And you can see that that's perfectly easy to read. As a keyboard player, I'm just looking at two staves so I can read all those chords. If you're singing one of those vocal lines, you can easily see where your part fits in with things. You notice you've got occasional shared notes, like the third note of the sopranos and the altos. They're just sharing that dotted crotchet D, that dotted quarter note there. There are other places where that happens as well. So it's a perfectly easy way of doing it. The great thing about hymns, chorales, this kind of chordal writing is that basically everybody is moving at the same time in the same rhythm. Okay, there are little moments like the end of bar 1 when the basses have a slightly different rhythm from the sopranos, altos and tenors, but most of the time we're all moving together. And there's nothing too complicated going over like the crossing over between soprano and alto parts or the crossing over between the tenor and the bass part. So it's a perfectly reasonable way of writing in short score. Now, just so we're comparing like with like, I'm now going to show you what this hymn tune Cum Ronda looks like in open score. So this is exactly the same music, but now we're in open score. Why would I want to write something in open score? Well, I wouldn't particularly need to have a hymn tune in open score for the reasons I've just explained. But if we were going to do something far more complicated with lots of semiquavers running all over the place, lots of independence between the parts, lots of crossing over where one part goes above another one that is normally below it, then actually in short score it would look far too complicated. So you get to the point where you have to present it in open score. So if you're going to sing something like Handel's Messiah, you're going to expect to see the vocal parts in open score, just like this. So what's actually the difference between the short score and the open score, apart from moving from a position where in short score you've got two parts sharing a stave and two parts sharing a stave, and this time each part has got its own stave. But there are other differences to note. So first of all, you'll notice the soprano part looks exactly the same as it did in short score. The alto part looks exactly the same as it did, and the bass part looks exactly the same as it did, except for this. Stem direction rules go back to following the normal conventions. So remember what we were saying, if you've got a note on the middle line, you can have a stem going up or going down, but if it's above the middle line, the stems go down. If it's below the middle line, the stems go up. So we go back to those conventions. So if you're having to do a conversion between short score and open score, which some people have to do in theory exams, for example, you could just copy out the soprano part, copy out the alto part, copy out the bass part exactly as they were, but putting them on their own staves and changing the stem directions to fit in with the conventional rules. Now, the part that's different and may take you by surprise is the tenor part. Because when we're in short score, remember the tenor part was written in the bass clef, wasn't it? But when we go into open score, the tenor part is written in the treble clef. Now this may seem a very strange state of affairs, but nevertheless, this is the convention that we've followed for years. So if you want to take a piece of music in short score, or maybe something you're composing in short score, but then you realize you need to present it in open score. When it comes to the tenor part, the first thing you've got to do is convert from bass clef to treble clef. Or of course, if you're converting from open score to short score, you've got to convert from treble clef to bass clef. The other thing you'll notice is that the tenor part now seems to be written an octave higher than it was before, because that first note in the tenor part looks as if it's G, a fifth above middle C. Well, actually in the short score, G was written below middle C, wasn't it? But notice underneath the treble clef for the tenor part, there's something that you don't see under the other treble clefs. Can you see under the tenor part treble clef, there's a little 8. And that little 8 says, actually you need to sing this an octave lower than it's written. So at one level, this seems like a complete act of madness, doesn't it? That now what we've got to do is to convert the clef so that we've got treble clef instead of bass clef, but we need to write it an octave higher than it was, or that it's sounded at, and then we need to write a little 8 under the clef to say, actually, sing it an octave lower than that. Why on earth do we do that? Well, if you're going to write the tenor part in the treble clef and you wrote those notes at pitch, you would be writing loads of ledger lines underneath the treble clef. That would make it very hard to read. So accepting that we're writing it in treble clef for reasons of tradition, then you put it up an octave so it's easier to read, but then you need to tell them that actually it's sounding an octave lower. So that's what it would look like in open score, the same piece of music. So really the part that you've got to take the greatest care with is the tenor part. Bass clef at pitch in short score, but in open score, treble clef, write it an octave higher than it sounds, put a little 8 underneath the clef to say, sing it an octave lower than it's printed. So this is just to clarify, what do we mean when voices are singing in short score? What do we mean when they're singing in open score? What would that look like? How would you convert from one to the other? So just to remind us, here's this particular example, cum ronda in short score, particularly noticing the tenor part there in the bass clef. And here's the same piece of music in open score, particularly noting the tenor part in the treble clef. So I hope that brings some clarity to the whole business of short score and open score.